Let me tell you something that'll shake you a bit. If your voice makes everyone comfortable all the time, you're not using it right. You're using it to please. Not to lead, not to influence, not to claim your space. And that's a problem. Because the world doesn't need more women shrinking themselves to fit into rooms. The world needs more women who walk into a room and shift the atmosphere just by how they speak. Not louder, just deeper, clearer, firmer, like a queen. See, a high-value woman doesn't beg for validation. She doesn't twist her words to avoid offending people who were never going to respect her in the first place. She doesn't sugarcoat the truth to be liked. Why? Because she understands that being liked by everyone is not a badge of honor. It's a sign you're playing too small. She's not reckless with her words, but she is honest. She's not cruel, but she's clear. And when she speaks, people feel her certainty. That's what makes the difference. A queen doesn't over-explain herself. She knows her is enough. Her silence is powerful. Her pauses are intentional. And when she speaks, there's weight to her words. You ever notice that? Some people talk and you forget what they said 5 seconds later. But then someone else speaks. And even if they say just a few words, those words stay with you. That's not luck. That's a command of presence. That's training. That's emotional intelligence. That's power. Too many women are raised to communicate like pleasers. Always soften the blow. Always Ari. Before every opinion. Always follow up your truth with a nervous laugh or a "just kidding." And let me tell you, there's nothing small or silly about that. That's conditioning. That's survival. You were taught to keep the peace. But a high-value woman doesn't just keep the peace. She speaks peace. And when peace requires truth, she speaks it. Even when it shakes the room. A high-value woman speaks with conviction, not permission. She doesn't raise her voice like she's auditioning for approval. She's not throwing her words out there hoping someone will catch them and nod in agreement. No, she speaks because what she says matters, not because she needs someone else to tell her it does. That's the difference. You can feel it in her tone, in her delivery, in her posture. There's no hesitation, no shaky uncertainty, no overcompensation. Just pure, grounded certainty. When she walks into a room, she's not scanning faces to see if people will accept her. She's not watering herself down to make others feel tall. She knows that her voice is not something she has to earn. It's something she already owns. So she uses it like a tool, not a weapon. She doesn't ask, "Can I say this?" She asks, "Is this true? Is it necessary? Does it align with my values?" And once the answer is yes, she speaks. With clarity, with calm, and with authority. Not to dominate, but to influence. Not to please, but to stand firm. She doesn't need permission to be who she already is. She understands that her voice was never meant to fit in. It was meant to lead. She's not afraid of silence. In fact, she uses it. Because a high-value woman understands that silence isn't weakness. It's control. It's presence. It's the pause that makes people lean in instead of tune out. See, a pleaser rushes to fill silence, afraid of being misunderstood or dismissed. She'll talk too fast, add too much, laugh nervously, just to keep the energy light. But a queen, she lets silence do the heavy lifting. She's not in a hurry to respond. She's not jumping to smooth things over. She waits, she breathes, and in that space, people feel her power. Silence makes room for impact. It's not empty, it's deliberate. She knows that the most powerful words are the ones that come after stillness. Because stillness creates presence. And when a woman is fully present, her voice carries weight. Even before she says a word, it shows restraint, it shows self-mastery. It shows that she's not performing. She's commanding. You don't have to be the loudest in the room when you've trained yourself to hold the room without saying a thing. That's what silence gives her: control without noise, power without force, presence without apology. A high-value woman doesn't over-explain herself, because she doesn't need to. Her words don't come with disclaimers. She doesn't follow up every decision with a justification. She doesn't talk in circles trying to make everyone feel okay with her choices. That's what a pleaser does. She gives long-winded reasons, softens her truth, adds 10 layers of context just to avoid judgment. But a queen, she speaks her truth and she lets it stand. No footnotes, no nervous backpedaling, no asking for permission through her tone. When she says, no, it's complete. There's no awkward pause afterward. No scramble to fill the space with excuses or apologies. Just no. Because she knows that no is a full sentence and a powerful one. It's a boundary. It's a statement of self-respect. She doesn't feel the need to convince anyone of why she did what she did. She trusts herself. And that trust comes through in how she speaks. Simple, clear, firm. Over-explaining is a habit born from self-doubt. It's what we do when we think our voice alone isn't enough. But when a woman values herself, she knows that her words don't need decoration. They just need to be true. So she speaks with clarity, not clutter. She honors her message more than she fears people's reactions to it. And that's why when she speaks, people don't just listen. They respect her. Her tone tells you everything you need to know about her. It's not rushed. It's not sharp. It's not desperate. It's steady, controlled, intentional, because a high-value woman doesn't just throw words into the air. She delivers them with purpose. She's trained herself not to speak from a place of emotional chaos. She speaks from her center, and that's exactly what gives her voice authority. Not volume, not aggression, but restraint, precision, stillness. That's real power. You can hear it when she speaks. There's no need to compete for attention, no need to force respect. She doesn't sound like she's trying to win an argument. She sounds like she's already won the battle within herself. There's a calm in her delivery that makes people listen, because calmness doesn't mean weakness. It means control, and control is magnetic. Pleasers often let their emotions dictate their tone. High, uncertain, overly sweet, or overly apologetic. But a woman who knows her worth understands that tone carries energy. If her energy is anxious, her words won't land. But when her energy is grounded, when her tone is aligned with confidence and clarity, every word she speaks becomes a statement of strength. It's not just what she says. It's how she says it that commands the room. She doesn't apologize for existing. She doesn't shrink herself just to make other people feel comfortable. She doesn't lower her voice or adjust her posture or tiptoe around her truth so she can be more digestible. A high-value woman knows that her presence is not a problem to solve. It's a standard to uphold. She's not here to play small. She's not here to keep the peace at the cost of her self-respect. She's here to take up space with dignity, with purpose, with authority. And that starts with how she speaks. You ever notice how often women begin sentences with, "Sorry. Sorry, can I just say something real quick? Sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but sorry for having an opinion. Sorry for correcting someone. Sorry for speaking up. Sorry for existing too boldly." That's not confidence. That's conditioning. That's what happens when society teaches you to be likable over being powerful. And if you don't unlearn it, you'll keep apologizing for the very things that make you strong. A high-value woman doesn't say, "Sorry," for speaking with clarity. She doesn't say, "Sorry," for being direct, for asserting her boundaries, for expressing what she needs. She understands the difference between being rude and being real. And she knows that you don't owe an apology for standing in your truth. She's not reckless with her words, but she's not timid either. She doesn't speak to please, she speaks to honor herself. This isn't about arrogance. This isn't about walking into rooms with an attitude. This is about owning your voice without guilt. When she says something, she doesn't look around for approval. She's not gauging the room to see if everyone's still smiling. She's focused, rooted, clear. She knows that her value isn't tied to whether people are comfortable with her truth, because comfort is temporary. But character, that's permanent. When a high-value woman speaks, she doesn't wrap her message in softeners like, "I might be wrong, but," or, "This is just my opinion." No. She knows that her voice matters, and she says what needs to be said. She doesn't water down her truth to be digestible. She doesn't lower her standards just so others can meet her where it's easy. And when she's faced with resistance, she doesn't fold, she stands taller. Because she's not speaking to be liked. She's speaking to be clear. Every time you apologize unnecessarily, you teach people how to treat you. You teach them that your ideas are optional, that your presence is negotiable, that your worth is fragile. But when you speak with clarity and don't attack, to your strength, you teach people to respect your space, your voice, your standards. A queen doesn't walk into a room asking for permission to lead. She walks in, assesses the room, and leads by example. with grace and strength working hand in hand. She's not reckless. She's not loud just to be loud. But she's deliberate. She's precise. And she knows that every time she shows up in her full power, someone somewhere is going to be uncomfortable. And that's okay. Because her job is not to make everyone feel at ease. Her job is to speak the truth, live in alignment with her values, and never apologize for being fully expressed. And let's be real, there are people out there who will only respect you when you stop apologizing. The minute you stop justifying your choices, the moment you stop softening every edge of your voice, they start listening differently. Why? Because power respects power, confidence commands attention, self-respect forces others to step up or step out. She's not concerned with being called too much. She's not afraid of being labeled as intimidating. Those words don't scare her. They expose the insecurity of the person using them. Because the truth is, when a woman stops apologizing for who she is, she becomes unshakable. And unshakable women don't chase acceptance. They embody it. There's something magnetic about a woman who speaks without shame, who says what she means and doesn't immediately follow it with a nervous laugh, who doesn't need to soften her power just to be palatable. That kind of woman walks into rooms and people feel her, not because she's demanding attention, but because she carries herself like someone who doesn't need to ask for it. She doesn't explain herself to people who've already decided not to understand her. She doesn't try to win over people who are committed, misunderstanding her confidence as arrogance. She knows that pleasing everyone is the fastest way to betray herself. And the moment she gave up on being universally liked was the moment she found freedom. The freedom to speak without editing herself. The freedom to say no without guilt. The freedom to walk away from conversations that don't honor her. That's what speaking without apology gives your freedom. The freedom to be bold. The freedom to be real. The freedom to own your space without waiting for someone to invite you in. And when you do that, when you speak with no shame, no fear, no filter designed to protect fragile egos, you rise. You rise into the version of yourself that commands the room, not because she's loud, but because she's unbothered. A high-value woman understands that her voice is a reflection of her self-worth. When she speaks, she's not asking, "Is this okay?" She's stating, "This is who I am." She doesn't rely on validation to back her up. She is her own backup. Her voice is her signature. Her words are intentional. And her silence, when she chooses it, is just as powerful as her speech. So no, she doesn't apologize for being too confident, too clear, too direct, too bold, because those are the very qualities that separate her from the noise. She speaks like a woman who knows that her voice matters. Even if it shakes, even if it disrupts, even if it challenges, because that's what leaders do. That's what queens do. They speak, they stand, and they never apologize for the space they were born to take. And if someone calls her too much, she lets them. VF. She won't agree just to avoid conflict. She won't hold her tongue if something crosses the line. She'll tell the truth, with integrity, with strength, with calm. And when she does, she shows every woman watching her that you don't have to choose between being kind and being clear. You can be both. You should be both. That's how you speak like a queen. That's how you lead, not by being liked, but by being real. She knows the power of restraint. She speaks less, but what she says hits harder. A high-value woman doesn't feel the need to dominate every conversation because she understands something most people don't. Impact isn't measured by how much you say, but by how well you say it. She doesn't chase the spotlight in every room. She lets her words carry the weight, not her volume. And because she's not constantly talking, when she does speak, people lean in. They pay attention. Because they've learned. When she speaks, it matters. There's a kind of pressure some women feel. To constantly perform, to always contribute, to keep conversations flowing so no one feels awkward. That pressure leads to overtalking, to filler words, to explaining things 10 different ways. But she's outgrown that. She's not afraid of silence. She's not afraid of being misunderstood for a moment if it means standing in her clarity. She doesn't talk to prove she's smart. She speaks because she knows she's smart. And smart women choose their words with precision. She doesn't interrupt just to insert her opinion. She doesn't rush in to make noise just so her voice is heard. She listens first, observes, She reads the room, takes in what's said, and when she speaks, she brings the conversation up a level. That's her power, she elevates, because she's not interested in reacting. She's interested in responding. She doesn't speak to impress. She speaks to influence. She speaks to anchor the conversation in something real. And that's what makes her unforgettable. Not that she speaks often, but that she speaks with purpose. Her words aren't fluff. They're sharp, direct, focused. She doesn't ramble. She doesn't chase validation in the conversation. She doesn't need to. She lets silence do some of the talking for her. And that silence, it's intentional. It's powerful. It says, I don't need to fill this space to prove my worth. I am the value in the room. People remember her not because she talks the most, but because her words linger. They sit with you, they challenge you, they remind you, because a woman who knows how to speak with impact isn't chasing attention, she commands it. Effortlessly, quietly, powerfully. That's what makes her voice royal. Not its volume, but its precision. Not how often she speaks, but how deeply her words land when she does. She cuts the nervous fillers. She's not saying, just, maybe, I think, or kind of, every other sentence like she's trying to sneak her opinions into the conversation. A high-value woman doesn't soften her words out of habit. She doesn't ask for permission through her tone. She doesn't deliver truth in the form of a question. When she speaks like someone who means it. Because she does. Her voice doesn't beg. It claims space. You can spot insecurity in language. It shows up in the way we second-guess ourselves mid-sentence, in the way we rush to make our point more palatable. It's not always loud. Sometimes it sounds like, I could be wrong, Buck, or this might not make sense, Buck. And just like that, your words lose their strength before they even land. She knows better. She's trained herself to catch those habits and cut them at the root. Because the more you dilute your language, the more you dilute your power. A queen doesn't say, I just wanted to ask. She says, I have a question. She doesn't say, I think this might be a good idea. She says, this is what I recommend. There's a difference between being flexible and being uncertain. And she knows the difference. She's not afraid to be direct, because she's earned her voice. She's sharpened it through experience. She's tested it in hard rooms, and now, when she speaks, she doesn't cloud her meaning with unnecessary fluff. She gets to the point, and the point is strong. It's not about being aggressive. It's about being clear. Filler words are what we use when we're trying to be less threatening, when we're afraid of being seen as too assertive. But a high-value woman isn't concerned about shrinking her presence to make others more comfortable. She's concerned with making sure what she says is true, grounded, and unapologetic. That's the work. It's not just about what comes out of your mouth. It's about the energy underneath it. She doesn't talk like she's tiptoeing around her value. She talks like she knows it. She doesn't whisper her opinions with disclaimers. She owns them. She doesn't lower her tone at the end of a statement to make it sound like a question. She ends with a period, not a question mark, because there's no question in her mind about what she's saying or who she is while she's saying it. And here's what happens when you stop using filler language. People start listening differently. They respond to you with more focus. They feel your certainty, even before they process your words. Because clarity in speech sends a message: I know who I am. I know what I'm saying, and I'm not here to ask for approval. You want to shift how people treat you? Start by shifting how you speak. So no, she's not filling her sentences with hesitation. She's not cushioning every statement with fluff. She speaks with intention, with structure, with precision, because she knows if her words don't carry strength, they carry doubt. And doubt is not the language of a queen. She doesn't wait for the energy in the room to define her. She sets it. A high-value woman knows that her presence alone can shift the atmosphere, not because she's trying to impress, but because she walks in grounded. She doesn't enter a space looking to be accepted. She enters knowing she belongs. There's a calm intensity about her, a quiet certainty. People notice her not because she demands attention, but because she commands it, without saying a word. A pleaser walks into a room and starts adjusting. She gauges reactions, tones herself down, watches faces, reads the mood, and molds herself to fit it. But a queen doesn't do that. She brings her energy, She brings her focus, her standard. She doesn't absorb the chaos around her. She anchors herself in her own power. And because she's so centered, others naturally start calibrating to her. That's influence. That's leadership. That's emotional discipline. It's not about being the loudest. It's about being the most anchored, the most present, the most self-aware. You can feel her strength before she even speaks. It's in the way she moves, the way she holds eye contact, the way she listens without needing to perform. Her energy doesn't rush, it doesn't scatter, it doesn't seek validation, it owns space. And because she owns space, others begin to respect it. She's not reactive. She doesn't get pulled into drama or distracted by petty energy. She sees it, but she doesn't mirror it. That's key. Because the moment you let the room dictate your emotional tone, you lose control. You start matching people who have no idea who they are. And she refuses to do that. She knows who she is, and that clarity is magnetic. She doesn't need to convince anyone of her worth. She is the standard. You want to shift how people perceive you. Start by shifting how you carry yourself before you even speak. Because your energy introduces you long before your voice does. And if your energy says, "I'm unsure, I'm trying to be accepted," or "I hope I'm enough," people will respond to that. But if your energy says, "I'm clear, I'm present, I know why I'm here," everything changes. And that shift isn't about arrogance, it's about self-mastery. She walks in, and she doesn't perform, she observes. She doesn't compete, she holds space. And when she speaks, it's from a place of rooted calm, not anxious urgency. She doesn't adjust her essence to suit the environment. She elevates the environment with her essence. That's the distinction. She's not looking for cues. She is the cue. So whether it's a boardroom, a conversation, a confrontation, or a crowd, she brings her standard into the space. She doesn't dim to match the tone. She leads with her own. And that's why her voice doesn't echo. It resonates. That's why her presence doesn't follow. It sets the tone. Because when a queen walks in, she doesn't just read the room, she rewrites it. Her words reflect her worth. Every sentence, every pause, every choice of tone, it all speaks to how deeply she respects herself. A high-value woman doesn't gossip, she doesn't whine, and she doesn't use her voice to tear people down. She's not speaking to gain favor or to entertain shallow conversations. She speaks with purpose. She speaks to build, not to beg. And because she values herself, her language follows suit. You can tell what she thinks of herself by how she talks. She doesn't use words to impress people. She uses them to represent who she is. She doesn't flatter excessively, doesn't throw compliments hoping for some in return. She doesn't manipulate with her tone or bait attention with her stories. She doesn't fake charm, she embodies integrity. That means her voice isn't out there begging for attention. It's commanding respect. Her language aligns with her values. Her conversations reflect her standards. And when you talk to her, you feel it. You feel that she's operating from a higher place. A pleaser uses her words to seek approval. A queen uses hers to express alignment. She won't say yes when she means no. She won't keep the peace by lying to herself. She doesn't say things just to smooth things over. She speaks what's real, because that's what a woman of value does. She honors the truth, not convenience. Even in conflict, she chooses restraint. She knows when to speak and when to walk away. She doesn't react out of impulse. She responds from principle. And when someone tries to bait her into disrespect or drama, she doesn't engage. Because her energy is too valuable to be spent on nonsense. She doesn't fight to be understood by people who are committed to misunderstanding her. She uses her voice with discipline, with discernment. She doesn't just know what to say. She knows when to say it, and that's power. Her words aren't cheap. They're not thrown around for attention. They're intentional. She understands the impact of language. And that means she's selective. Selective about the words she uses, the tone she delivers them with, and the energy behind them. Because once you know your worth, you realize your voice is currency. You don't waste it. And when she's quiet, that's just as powerful. Because she doesn't speak to fill silence. She doesn't speak because she's uncomfortable with stillness. Her silence is loaded. It says, "I'm not going to lower myself to respond to that." It says, "I don't need to explain myself." It says, "I choose peace over noise." And that's a woman who's mastered the art of control. not because she's suppressing emotion, but because she's leading it. She talks like someone who knows she has nothing to prove. Her tone doesn't fluctuate for approval. Her message doesn't twist based on who's listening. She doesn't speak to match the room, she speaks to elevate it. And if the room can't handle it, that's not her problem. She'd rather be too honest than quietly complicit. She'd rather be too clear than conveniently vague, because her voice is an extension of her self-respect. She knows that what she says is a mirror of how she sees herself, so when she speaks, you feel her boundaries, you feel her confidence, you feel her presence, not because she's trying to be anyone else, but because she's fully anchored in who she is. She doesn't inflate, she doesn't perform. She doesn't oversell, she speaks from truth, from strength, from a place that says, "This is who I am, and I will not lower my voice to be accepted by those who can't meet me here." That's how a queen speaks, with the kind of clarity, restraint, and self-awareness that can't be faked. She doesn't talk like she needs something. She talks like she owns everything that matters. Her voice doesn't plead, it sets the standard. Her words don't chase, they define. Because when a woman knows her worth, her language starts working for her, not against her. Her voice becomes a crown, not a crutch. And when she speaks, the world listens, not because she's loud, but because she's undeniably real. So understand this, your voice is not just sound, it's your identity in motion. It's the echo of your self-respect, your values, your boundaries, your truth. And the moment you decide to stop talking like a pleaser and start speaking like a queen, everything around you begins to shift. People start listening differently, the energy in the room bends, the standard rises, not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. You're no longer seeking space, you are the space. You're not waiting to be heard. You speak and the room adjusts, because queens don't speak to be accepted. They speak to lead. And when you carry yourself like that, when your voice becomes a reflection of your inner strength, you don't just speak with power, you live in it.